From a distance, I could already see that this cow that was darted, she didn't show very nicely. Normally they'll show a little bit of symptoms, and this cow was just looking at me like, hey, what are you doing here? So I actually threw a stick, and I threw a large elephant fecal ball in her direction, and she didn't react at all. So I was like, okay. I walked to the back, and the moment I lay my hand on her bum, she turns around and fully charges me. I fell on the ground, and the animal kept coming for me, and I tried to scramble backwards, and I ended up in a thorn bush. And I was like, ooh, now I literally can't go any further. But the animal was still coming for me. So I made the big decision to do a deep dive into the thorn bush. Luckily, that managed to stop the rhino. The rhino was like, okay, I won't go in there. I was covered in thorns from head to toe. My partner, who's also a vet, is still surgically removing some of the thorns that are so deep under my skin that we only find them now.
It's great to be back in the studio, and even better so in a different color than usual. I've traded my usual black scrubs for a soft pink today, courtesy of Stitch, who have generously sponsored my scrubs for this episode. If you've been to Hillcrest Vets, you'll know the whole team wears Stitch. They're not just comfortable, they last. They move with you, which matters when you're crouched on the floor or holding a wriggly patient. And they work both in our sweltering summers and our cooler winter days. They've just released a lovely new range of winter colors too. So a big thank you to Stitch for keeping us practical and professional. Now on to today's episode. I'm so pleased to be joined by Dr. Bart, a wildlife and zoo veterinarian whose career has taken him from the Netherlands to the UK to the heart of South Africa's conservation landscape. Whether he's darting rhinos, mentoring young vets, or managing complex field treatments with limited resources, Dr. Bart brings a rare mix of calm, skill, and commitment to the animals he works with and to the communities that live alongside them. Today, we're talking about what it really means to work in wildlife and conservation medicine, from the ethical tightropes to the emotional weight and the logistical puzzles, and the moments that make it all worth it. Let's get started. A warm welcome to the Paws Effect Podcast. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm very interested to learn a little bit more about the kind of work that you're doing. We have a lot of interest, obviously, in us and the kind of work we're doing as vets, pet professionals, and I think giving a bit of an insight into some of the paths that you can take. It doesn't have to be small animal practice. It doesn't have to be equine. I would love to understand a little bit more about you and sort of your journey. So let's start off with who you are and how you got to the point of doing what we're discussing today, which is wildlife medicine.
Yeah, thank you
and
very
surgery.
much. No, thanks for having me.
I must have missed that.
No, it's a big mix of things. But my name is Bart. I'm actually a Dutch veterinarian, but I studied in Belgium. So that's actually where my journey started. I didn't get in the Netherlands. It's just like South Africa, where there's only one university for 17 million people. So I didn't get in. So I moved to Belgium, where you can walk in and you can actually start the next day, which was quite nice for me. And the studies is also in Dutch, it's in Flemish, so it was quite straightforward. And from that, I spent 7 years in Belgium. I repeated one of the years. My first year, I just came back from a year of Australia, chilling on the beach and drinking beer, so I wasn't really in the study mode yet. So I repeated the first year, and then after 7 years, I actually finished as an equine vet and started working in equine medicine and surgery in a big clinic in the Netherlands. And even then I was like, well, I want a little bit more. So I did a rotating internship at the University of Liverpool in the UK for about 13 months, rotating through surgery, rotating through medicine, orthopedics, all sorts. And then I was actually about to come to South Africa, and then COVID hit. So that actually sent me back to the Netherlands, where I worked for another year in private practice at the same clinic as an equine vet. And then it was time to finally start the South Africa journey. So I managed to get a job at the University of Pretoria, Onderstepoort, the big veterinary campus. And it was not just any job, it was a wildlife residency. In South Africa, we call it an AMET vet in wildlife disease. And that was a 3-year job. And while you are working, you're also learning, but you're also teaching. You have the students surrounding you and asking you a lot of questions. And at the same time, you're trying to deal with complicated cases that are often referred to you. So I did that for 3 years, and then I got offered a position at a private clinic in Hoedspruit in the Greater Kruger Park area. So basically all the parks that are attached to the Kruger National Park, we look after the wildlife in those parks. And there's 3 other vets with us, and I'm the 4th.
Wow. And living the dream, I can imagine.
Yeah, no, it's
maybe not as good as the beach in Australia, but pretty second base.
No, it's very fortunate to get this job, especially as a foreigner. It's very difficult sometimes to get to these positions, and I actually got to know these guys that I'm working with now during my residency. I did my research with them. So we worked together a lot already. We knew how everybody's working, what people like and don't like. It was easy for us to make that next step to become part of the practice.
So for the listeners who have got no idea, and probably me too, out of curiosity, what does a normal day look like for you? Is it sort of, waiting for something to happen? How does it differ to, say, some of the work that you were doing, obviously associated with Onderstepoort and the inflow of cases into a clinic?
Yeah. So I'll start at Onderstepoort. So there the days were very different. Every day was different. Still now, every day is different. But we had a lot of captive animals that we looked after. So a lot of zoo animals. We looked after some private zoos in Johannesburg and Pretoria, also some private collections. We helped out in Johannesburg Zoo, we helped at the Pretoria Zoo. So it was about, I would say, almost 70% captive animals, and then about 30% free ranging. And people would just call you with issues, and where normally somebody would call you with a cat that is vomiting, then they call you with a tiger or a lion that's vomiting. And then you go and explore and see what the options are. Often other veterinarians, because we were at the university, often other veterinarians would refer cases to us. So cases that they can't handle at home, we would look after. We had a whole facility to keep these animals, and basically had a wildlife hospital with CT scans, MRIs, and all the different diagnostic methods to look after these animals and try to figure out what's actually wrong. And then currently, it's more on a call-out basis, where at Onderstepoort we had a lot of planned work as well. And currently, it's more on call-out basis, where people will call us for animals in distress. And like I said, predominantly in the Greater Kruger Park area, we do a lot of conservation work. So often it's big 5 species or endangered species that are either stuck in a snare. That's about 50% of our work. Animals walking around with snares that we go and take off. A lot of dehorning. So we look after all the rhinos in the Greater Kruger Park area pretty much. We did a lot of dehorning this year already. Couple of 100 animals. We spent weeks on weeks dehorning rhinos. So we've become very specialized in that. We've had great success, and although the poaching is still continuing, we do see that the poaching also continues. But there's actually a paper that just has come out that's shown that that dehorning is successful, and that we actually that the population, although there is poaching, the population is slowly increasing, which is good in these areas. That's and then, we also get a lot of animals that are hit by cars, hit by trains, that are stuck in human waste or human facilities. We get leopards that are stuck in lodges. We get a lot of antelope that somehow get stuck in a lodge. We had an antelope that got stuck in a human waste deposit. So basically in a tank, we had to fish that out. Very elephants on the mine, lions on the mines, lions in the communities. You see a wide variety.
Every day is different.
Cases. Yeah,
I can imagine. So, I mean, this is now explaining it, but when I was having this conversation with my son, and we enjoy going to the game reserves and spending our leisure time looking at wildlife. We will come across something and we'll go like, oh, shame, it's injured. And the whole thing is, that's nature. There's no intervention. And so he couldn't quite understand how I was going to talk to a wildlife vet about, and the kind of things that you show that you do, which is, a lot of intervention, which is sort of contradictory to some of the things that we're probably aware of. So from a conservation perspective, obviously the dehorning and stuff, but what are the limitations? Sorry, you'll see where I'm going with this. What are the limitations in terms of the intervention that you're doing with wild animals?
Yeah. So it's a little bit different per reserve, and then we're purely talking about reserves, not privately owned animals.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different between reserves. Some reserves do intervene if it's not caused by humans. For example, if it's a very valuable animal. But in pretty much every reserve, we do treat animals that are damaged or that are hurt because of human something. How can I say this nicely? So basically, we do intervene with animals that are hurt as the result of human mistakes. So either whether that's poaching or whether that's hit by a car, anything that has to do with humans, animals that are stuck in a fence. Where if that's an animal that's, for example, bitten by a lion and it's gotten away, then it's nature, and then we don't intervene. Is it a very endangered species, for example, the African wild dogs, then sometimes that line becomes a little bit fine. But we do have protocols in place, and we actually have like decision trees to say like, is this an animal that we're going to treat or are we going to leave it? And that kind of helps us to decide what to do. And we work together with the EWT, the Endangered Wildlife Trust, to make those kind of decisions, especially when it comes to wild dogs or lions, those kind of species. If it's elephants, we work together with Elephants Alive. If it's vulture species, then we work together with also EWT, sometimes Moholo Holo, the rehab center close to Hoedspruit. And all together, we put our heads together and we say like, is this an animal that we need to treat? Is this caused by humans? And what can we do about it? And how can we treat that animal in such a way that it can remain in its natural habitat? Because we don't want to take it away if it's not necessary.
Hey there, pet parents. It's Dr. Kara, the Ultra Pet Vet here. Brachycephalic, meaning short-muzzled dogs, have uniquely shaped jaws that can make picking up and chewing normal kibble really difficult. That's why Ultra Pet has created a kibble specifically designed for easy pickup. It contains glucosamine, chondroitin, and green lip muscle extract to help support your dog's joints so that they stay mobile and active. The inclusion of beet pulp and prebiotics helps support a healthy gut by promoting the growth of beneficial bacteria in the digestive system. Omega-3 and 6 fatty acids promote a shiny coat and a healthy skin. Ultra Pet offers 100% money-back guarantee. Try Ultra Pet's premium recipe for short-muzzled dogs today. And in terms of treatment plans, now I'm talking obviously with my experience, and the best I can do is say, a very aggressive dog versus, a Labrador that's behaviorally and temperamentally calm and relaxed. I can imagine some of the situations that you end up in takes a lot of experience and planning. How do you plan for this? How do you mitigate some of the risk associated with your work?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's always at the back of our minds. It's super important that we plan the operations no matter what species we work with. And sometimes it's not always possible, but we make sure we've got a good team together, that everybody knows what's going on. Before an operation, we'll have a little chat to everyone and saying like, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is hopefully how it's going to go. And if not, then this is plan B and plan C. But we have to trust the drugs that we're working with. That's the most important. If the drugs are not working, most of these animals, we have to immobilize them to be able to work with them. Especially if you think about lions, leopards, they need to be asleep properly in order for us to work with them. So that's point one. We need to make sure that our drugs are functional, and we need to make sure that the dart is in nicely so that the animal is sleeping. And then, even then, sometimes there's circumstances that you don't have in hand. The other day, we immobilized 2 lions at the same time, but the whole pack stayed around. So we tried to get them away, but we just couldn't get to the animals that we actually darted. And that is quite challenging. And then you have to be very creative and say, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we managed to go off-road with a vehicle in the most impossible way to get to those animals, and we were able to load them on the vehicle and move away from the pack. And then it's dark, so you don't know where the other animals are at the moment you step off the vehicle. So you always have to make sure that there's somebody there with a rifle in the worst case scenario. And again, that's part of the team. And then because it's dark, you don't always 100% sure if that animal is fully asleep. So we have certain methods by giving a little prod and throwing a few rocks to see if it's actually sleeping. And then the moment you're like, okay, I think it's sleeping, you'll start from the back. So you'll pull the tail, so you're far away from the head. And you give a good little pull on that tail to see if there's any response. And if there's any response, at least you're far away from the head. And then you'll move your way up towards the head with lines, and then you put a blindfold on. And from that moment, you can actually breathe a little bit, because if it wakes up, at least it doesn't see you. And that's how you progress from there. It's a very challenging environment. If you think about elephants, we always make sure that there's a helicopter in the air, especially if we're darting cows, especially if we're darting the matriarch, the boss of the group. Because the helicopter will have to push the elephants further away, because often they tend to come back. And then if they see you're working on one of the elephants, they can get very upset, and they will destroy anything in their path. Then we make sure we've got a helicopter. There's always different puzzle pieces to every scenario that we try to work in.
And from a resource perspective, I mean, is it how does the funding compare to, say, private practice where owners are bringing in cats and dogs or equines, which
so that again is also very dependent on the case. We work together with a lot of NGOs. So we actually have a snare fund, and in that snare fund there's a lot of NGOs. And if we get a call from a snared animal, so that's an animal that walks through a wire set by poachers. Animal walks through there, either becomes stuck and is still alive when it's called into us, or what often happens is they actually manage to break the snare, the wire, and now they start roaming around with it. And that wire often cuts deeper and deeper, so those animals have horrendous wounds. So we get that phone call, then we put on our little WhatsApp group with the NGOs, listen guys, we've got this and this animal with a snare. Are there any funds available to treat the animal? And 99% of the cases, that's the case. There's funds available, and then we can do our thing. Then there's also the reserves that are responsible for their own animals. So if it's a reserve that we know has got funds, then it's just the responsibility of the reserve. And then we also are more and more getting tourist groups, funders groups, as we call them, and they join us on an experience. So, for example, with the Rhino Dehorning in the last few weeks, every day we'll have a different group, and they will be responsive for funding that day, basically. And we take them along, and we show them what we do, we explain what we do, how we do it, what are the drugs, and they get a chance to be there on the ground with us. And that's becoming more and more popular, because that takes the pressure away from the reserves. because they will otherwise be responsive of the dehorning for 200 rhinos, which becomes very expensive. And now we can have these people on the ground joining our conservation operations, and kind of firsthand realizing what is going on and why we need to do it. So those are very emotional and very interesting moments for those groups often. But for us, it's very valuable because it allows us to do our work.
Absolutely. And I think, it's an opportunity for people to see the kind of work that you're doing, but also, it's going to leave a lasting impression in terms of, whether they then continue to contribute or spread the message or raise awareness about the issues at hand, particularly for foreigners.
Yeah, exactly. Especially we get a lot of American people. And like you say, the word of mouth is so much stronger because they'll have pictures, they'll be able to put a hand on the rhino, and that impression often lasts so much longer than reading it in the newspaper.
Of course. So from a conservation perspective, what are the big programs that you're involved in at the moment that looks at more herd health and conservation rather than individual situations? Can you give us some examples of some of them?
Yeah, so our practice is currently involved with the reintroduction of the rhinos that are sitting in Klerksdorp. There was a big rhino farm owned by one individual. Those rhinos have been purchased by African Parks, and our team is involved with the reintroduction of those animals back into the wild. So recently, a big group of rhinos went to Rwanda, the first animals in Rwanda for a long time, the first rhinos for a long time. I'm actually hopefully going there next week to make sure those animals are doing all right. And we've got probably another 1,800 rhinos to reintroduce. So that's one of the big projects that we are working with. Then we're working closely with projects such as the cheetah meta-population, the reintroduction of cheetahs around South Africa. A lot of the reserves have successful cheetah breeding programs, and we make sure that those cheetahs are divided over South Africa and that the genetics are spread in the correct way. So the meta-population is responsible for those kind of genetics and making sure, keeping track of everything, and we're responsible for darting the animal and making sure it ends up in a crate so they can bring it to the right place. What else have we got going on? We've got a lot of projects at the moment running that are focused on anti-poaching and finding snares before animals get caught in them. So we use target species or indicator species such as hyenas that we put collars on. So we can actually, hyenas will respond to a dead animal very fast before we know that animal is there laying dead. So then we can send rangers and saying like, hey, there's something going on in this position. Please check it out. And sometimes they do find animals that are being caught in snares, and those hyenas will then pinpoint where those snares are set. And then we can send our rangers and say like, hey, please make sure there's no other snares around there. And we've got a lot of those kind of projects going on to kind of, hopefully reduce the poaching a little bit and in that way. Very challenging. But we'll get there at some stage. But it's in the Netherlands, we've got a saying, we are mopping with the tap open. It's as long as we don't do something about the origin of the problem, then it becomes very difficult for us to stop the poaching. Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine that there is a lot of resistance or red tape around some of the things because you're dealing with multiple parks and obviously huge areas of land. There's discussion about some of the fences being knocked down, for example, to assist with the increasing population of elephants. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and some of the concerns around that?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that fences are being reduced, as long as we can keep the the control over those areas. I think that's the most important. But what's happening now is, for example, Kruger Park has got, they estimate over 60,000 elephants, where their carrying capacity is much lower. And so those elephants almost destroy a little bit of the landscape every time they walk over it. So if you have a lot of elephants in a small area, they will be responsible for a lot of the landscaping. They're called landscapers, but also with negative side effects, because they'll also damage a lot of the large trees, which has negative side effects for some bird species. For example, the southern ground hornbills, they only make nests in trees, hollow trees. So yeah, if you don't have those trees, you also lose a lot of other species. And then if you're able to give those species more space by opening fences and dropping fences and making wildlife corridors, those animals can do their natural migration. And then if you reduce the pressure of the elephants on the land in one area, then that land can recover a little bit before the next herd of elephant goes over there. Whereas now it continues being trampled or landscaped by them. But yeah, it's always a weird thought that there's actually too many elephants in South Africa. If you tell that to somebody from Europe, they're like, "What? Elephants are endangered." But yeah, we actually have a little bit of an elephant problem at the moment. Yeah.
And what is the issues with using contraceptives, or why in South Africa? And I'm slightly setting you up with this question, so you're allowed to say, no, I'm not going there. But what is the issue with the culling process? So, with finding rather than, or using both dropping fences, but also managing population, again, from that herd health perspective.
Look, from a veterinary perspective, the moment we put a fence around something, we are responsible for managing those populations. So that's what we've done with the Kruger Park. We've done that with multiple areas in South Africa, and we're responsible for managing those populations. So either we need to translocate those animals if it's too many elephants, or we need to contracept. Or we need to make sure that there's number reductions by the means of culling. And there's nothing, in my perspective, there's nothing wrong with culling. And it's you have to bring that very carefully to a lot of people. Yeah. But it's difficult to understand, but there's so many elephants, and it can actually it would be able to supply a lot of people with food. Surrounding the parks. Kruger Park used to do this, and they actually have a fully set up abattoir for elephants, and they used to supply the surrounding communities with food. I think that's something down the line we definitely have to think about. And if you think about it, it's a very nice way of supplying food, because it's a lot better than our bio industry, where we put 300 cows in a stable. At least these animals have had a nice life. They've been outside, and it's quite sustainable to a certain degree. It's definitely an option. And vaccinating, like you say, we can actually give the elephants a vaccine that makes them sterile. Basically, they can't reproduce anymore, and that also works very nicely. We do see some behavioral problems, like the family bonds are not as tight. For example, if you are working with an elephant group that have been vaccinated and you dart one animal, they often just disperse. Where another group of elephants that has been vaccinated or sterilized, they will stay together very closely. And then we also see some behavioral problems in elephant bulls that have been sterilized with the vaccine. Because, we don't really know why, but it's almost like they are a little bit frustrated that nothing is happening for them. And they become a little bit more aggressive. It's not very often that we see it, but we definitely have seen it in the past. So there's different ups and downsides to that. And you have to do it every year. So it also becomes quite a cost.
Yeah, and I mean, I can imagine that all these kind of things have knock-on consequences. I mean, can we go back to your the work that you're doing on the rhinos? How do you think, or is there any consequence of removing the horn, for example? Does it change potentially some of the genetics and the hierarchy of the males, or is that a misnomer?
No, so the impact on the animals is very minimal. To start with, they've looked at the stress hormones. So you can't go and take blood of a rhino every day, but what they've done is they looked at the stress hormones in the fecal balls. So before the dehorning, during the dehorning, and after the dehorning. And you can see a stress response for about 2 days, and then it's back to normal baseline. So they take those fecal balls, they look at how many stress hormones are in there, and basically you can see a little hill during the dehorning period in about 2 days, 48 hours, and then it goes back to baseline. So that's one thing that we can say, like, hey, this doesn't have a huge impact on the rhinos. And what we do say is, if we dehorn one animal, we need to dehorn them all, because otherwise there's the competition between animals will become lethal. If one animal's got a horn and one doesn't, then the fight will just continue and might not end very well for the animal without a horn, because he will have a disadvantage. But they don't use it to defend themselves from predators and things like that. A lion might go for a small rhino calf, whether the mom's got a big horn or not. And that's already a rare opportunity. It doesn't happen very often that lions will attack rhinos. The rhinos are often very protective, whether they've got a horn or not. And their size alone is often enough to scare the animals away. And then what we've seen is they breed well. Their calves are normal. The time period between calves is normal. And those animals are otherwise healthy. We've done it now for about, in some of the parks, this is year 6, 7 that we've done it, and all those animals are doing well. And like I said, the population is actually increasing slightly, even though the poaching is still ongoing in South Africa.
And I mean, you spoke about the rehabilitation of the birds that obviously were impacted by the poaching incident. Can you give us more information about what happened there? I don't want to give the thing away by by giving you my version of events.
Yeah. No, so what happens now is, and what's increasing, actually, I just got a message that there's been another poisoning event. But what's very unfortunate and what's happening more and more at the moment is that poachers are trying to get rid of vultures for multiple reasons. It's one of those indicator species. So they basically, if there's a carcass, we can see based on the vultures, like, oh, there's a carcass and there's something going on there. So the poachers don't want to be found out, basically. So they want to get rid of the vultures. Then there's a big thing in local medicine where they want the claws, they want the beak. Some say the local medication contains the brain of the vultures. That's the other side of the story. So it's for local medication and to get rid of an indicator species. And what they will do, they'll poison a carcass with certain poison, and we find those animals often very impaired, very sick, and often a lot of them already have died at that stage. So I'm sure you're referring to the big vulture poisoning recently in the Kruger National Park. A very sad event where over 120 animals died, but luckily we managed to save over 90 animals. So that was a huge get-together of NGOs, wildlife vets in the area, the rehabilitation center Moholo, close to Hoesprout, and we all worked together to get those animals back back into the wilds, basically. Luckily, the poison that was used in that instance it was fairly treatable, and we could treat all those animals. We had about 90 animals in hospital, and there was a team working there day and night to make sure those animals were being fed. They needed fluids, they needed medication, they needed eye medication, and luckily we pulled most of those animals through, and are now flying around back in Kruger Park. So it's a very sad thing that's going on now. Yeah, it's very challenging at times.
Yeah, is it important that people are aware of the kind of challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, it's always difficult in our position because we have a lot of information, and again, we also don't want to have that information end up with the wrong person. And that I think that is sometimes very challenging of what's the information that you can give out. So you'll never hear me say how many rhinos are in a certain area, or what poison had been used, and we kind of try to tell you as much as possible and inform the public as much as we can. But we also need to be careful because we do have a lot of tricks up our sleeve, luckily, to be ahead of some of the poaching events.
Good to hear that. I think it's awful. I think give us a case that really stands out in your mind, the kind of thing that you're just going to think about for years and years that you are prepared to share with us.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you my biggest recent scare. We dehorned a large number of rhinos, and so the rhinos get darted from the helicopter. There's one vet in the helicopter and one is on the ground, and I was on the ground team that day, and my parents were actually there visiting. It was all nice and well, and from a distance I could already see that this cow that was darted, she didn't show very nicely. Normally they'll show a little bit of symptoms when they start to be immobilized. They'll have their head up and they start swaying a little bit. And this cow was just looking at me like, hey, what are you doing here? So I actually threw a stick, and I threw a large elephant fecal ball in her direction, and she didn't react at all. So I was like, okay, maybe she's sufficiently sleeping for me to go there. Because normally we already put our hands on the animal while still standing, so we can make sure they actually end up in the right position. So I walked to the back. And the moment I lay my hand on her bum, she turns around and fully charges me. And I fell on the ground, and the animal kept coming for me. And I tried to scramble backwards, and I ended up in a thorn bush. And I was like, ooh, now I literally can't go any further. But the animal was still coming for me. So I made the big decision to do a deep dive into the thorn bush. And luckily that managed to stop the rhino. The rhino was like, okay, I won't go in there. A black rhino would definitely have come after me, but a white rhino will be like, okay, no, that's too much for me. And I was covered in thorns from head to toe. My partner, who's also a vet, is still surgically removing some of the thorns that are so deep under my skin that we only find them now. That was one of the things that I won't forget very quickly.
I can imagine. Very, very scary. I think until people have been on the ground with these animals, it's all very well being in a car. But I think
it's literally 2,000 kilograms that can move incredibly fast. You're like, how can it move so fast? It's quite mind blowing, actually.
Oh. In terms of work-life balance and the kind of stresses that veterinarians across the world are discussing, mental health challenges, burnout, is that something that you avoid because of the work you're doing, or is that still applicable in the kind of work that you do?
Oh, no, it's still very applicable, I think. My work often starts, I get up at 5 a.m. and I leave home while it's still dark, and I come back when it's dark. Very long days, a lot of weekend work, a lot of night work, especially with the predators, the hyenas, the leopards, the lions. most of that happens at night because then they're most active. So no, we make incredibly long days. And I think sometimes the idea of wildlife vet is a little bit romanticized, but it's actually long days and a lot of patience. Sometimes we spend 6-7 hours looking for an animal at night and you don't come right, and you have to drive back for 1.5-2 hours before you can go to bed. So yeah, no, it's incredibly difficult sometimes, and I think you need a good support system. And we also get to see a lot of sad things. We also have to euthanize animals that might be very endangered, especially if you think about wild dogs. There's about 500 left in the area, and if you have to put one down, that hurts you. That makes you sad, especially if that's a human inflicted injury. That's very difficult. And for me, I love elephants. They're my absolute favorite. And sometimes we also have to put down elephants because of snared injuries, because of they cause trouble. That's very difficult, and you need a good support system to be able to talk about those things. And like I said, my partner is also a veterinarian, so she understands what's going on, which makes it a lot easier to talk about it. Also, my colleagues, like we don't spend a lot of time working all together. We're not in a practice, so we don't see each other. I can't walk into the next consultation room and say like, hey, what would you do? Or listen, what happened today? But we do try to come together and every now and then and have a beer and talk about what we've done. And or even give a phone call and make sure you talk about these things. That's probably the most important thing. Yeah.
And what is time off for you? Whereas most of us small animal veterinarians will come to the game reserves. Is your idea of coming to the beach? How do you decompress?
I need to get away from the bushveld. I try to avoid safaris and those kind of things, which is challenging, especially if my family's coming over and all they want to do is go to Kruger Park. I'm like, I don't want to go somewhere else. So no, we go to Cape Town, go back home to the Netherlands, try to avoid seeing any wildlife. Yeah.
You do quite a lot of mentoring. How do you give sort of advice and discuss the challenges? Are you one of the vets who says, like, I would think very carefully before going into this profession, or do you encourage people who want to pursue it as a career just to go all out and do it?
Yeah, no, I'm still like, if that's something you really want to do, then just go ahead and do it. Like, there's actually a shortage of vets, and the more vets we have, like, the more pressure we can take off each other. I'm on the boat. Like, if you want to do it, just do it, and try to support people. There's a lot of foreigners that want to come to South Africa, and there's actually a shortage of vets in South Africa as well. And luckily, the process is getting easier and easier. They're actually thinking about taking away the government year. And I try to support those people that want to start a career in veterinary medicine, and try to not even necessarily coming to South Africa, but just any people that have questions or wonder what would be the best step or how can I study. I try to be there for them and help them a little bit. And that's what I liked at being at university, working at the University of Onderstepoort as well. Like, you're involved with the students, and it just gives you a different perspective to your day-to-day work. Otherwise, it just becomes all a bit of a blur. But at least if you can just spice it up with some other things on the side, that's always nice.
No, absolutely. I agree. And what do you think the biggest misconception is about the field of work that you're doing for veterinary students?
Difficult. Like I say, I think it's quite romanticized by some of the TV programs out there. Maybe, not sure if that's the case, but some of these people, we get a lot of students now at my current job as well, often from abroad, and they're surprised by the hours that we make. I'll tell them, like, we're leaving at 5 a.m. and just pack your lunch and dinner and a sweater because it will be cold at 12 at midnight. I think that's quite an eye opener for them. And then a lot of people expect that we that we're busy 24 hours seeing a lot of animals, which is also not true. Like I said, sometimes I spend 7 hours for one animal and we don't even get that animal. So they had the caseload, although it's very exciting, it's not very high always. And we spend a lot of time with particular individuals trying to find that particular wild dog, try to find that particular leopard. And that I think that's what some people forget. Like, it's a lot of looking for animals and it's a lot of waiting. And part of it is luck as well. Does the animal turn up? Does it not turn up? We can't tell that animal, your appointment is at 6. Please come and see the doctor. So yeah, I think
put a lead on them.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think one of the misconceptions for sure.
Mm. And your most heartbreaking moment as a professional?
Yeah, I always want to fix everything. And sometimes you have to be honest with yourself and say, like, we can't fix this. So like I say, like, sometimes we have to euthanize animals that are severely compromised. We had to, unfortunately, euthanize a rhino with a severely broken leg. And yeah, that is very impactful in your life, and especially, like I said, because it's such an endangered species, and you're trying so hard to save every one of them, but you can't repair a broken leg in an animal that weighs 2,000 kilograms. It's just not possible. So better than put that animal out of their misery and let them be pain free than carrying on like that. But yeah, it's not easy.
It's hard. Yeah. So what keeps you motivated? What keeps you inspired?
Realizing that we are working with incredible animals and that we are saving animals and we are trying to do our bit for conservation. And yeah, just realizing that working with such protected animals and such endangered animals is such a privilege. And I get to work in the most beautiful areas, Sabi Sands, Mala Mala, where most people dream about. We get to go there and I get to do my job there, and I look around and you're in the middle of the bush. And although it is very stressful, the moment that animals, the immobilization has been reversed and you look around, you're like, oh yeah, this is a pretty nice office. Can't complain too much about that.
It could be worse. But I sometimes take stock in the good moments.
Yes, yeah.
And finally, for the listeners who are passionate about wildlife or veterinary cages generally, what is one thing you'd like to leave them with about the work that you do?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So I always give the advice to people that want to, this is for people that want to become a wildlife vet specifically. Do your time in small animal practice, do your time in equine practice or mixed practice, just so you have that clinical skill set. My 3 years in equine practice was super valuable, and I still use those skill sets every day, like taking x-rays, placing catheters, working with large animals, because working with a horse under anesthesia is pretty similar to a rhino that's being immobilized. And just making you aware of the size of the animal and what to do and how to handle it. So yeah, make sure you get some experience with your domestic animals before trying to get into wildlife. And then if you are thinking about becoming a vet in general, just do it. There's not enough of us, and we do need you, and we need to. There's a lot of self-harm under veterinarians. There's a lot of mental issues, and I think the only way of avoiding that is increasing the amount of vets and decreasing the workload on us.
I agree with you. I agree, and thank you for bringing that up, because it's something that I think listeners are probably only becoming aware of now that we're having these kind of discussions. It's between our collective group of veterinarians, we know the discussion, we know the reality of the work that we're doing, we understand the pressures, but it's something that we're not very good at sharing.
No.
It's kind of we have to have that professional face, and no one wants to discuss that kind of thing, particularly with clients. And for the listeners, in terms of being supportive of us as professionals, what would you say a take-home message is for them so that they better understand us as individuals?
We try to be there for you and your pet. And I hope owners understand the incredible workload that we are under. And we always try to have your best. We try to do our best for you and your pet. And I actually had a student the other day asking me like, I want to become a vet, but I also really love humans. And will I get to work with humans? I said, listen, unfortunately, you'll be working with humans about 90% of the time, and about 10% of the time is with the actual animal. But we try to do our best and I think try to understand the position that we are in as good as possible, although it is quite difficult. But I think that's why these kind of podcasts are very important to shine a little bit of light on our thoughts and on our side of the story. And it hurts us as well to put an animal down or to only be able to offer a very expensive treatment. But that's actually one very important thing that I want to say. What people don't see is, if you go to the doctor, if you have a good health insurance and you go to the doctor, you don't even see the invoice. And you don't know what the cost of produce is and things that are being used. And the cost for treatment, we vets have to buy in syringes and needles and medication. And that's actually the biggest cost. Like, it's the pharmaceutical companies that are driving up prices. And we as vets then also have to increase our price because we do work long hours and we do have to somehow make a living. Although we love your pets, but we also need to pay off our student loan. We need to be able to have some food. So it's although the prices are increasing, we try to do our best and try to offer the best service as possible. And we also think about your pet, and we go home and we also shed a tear sometimes. But we just can't do that in front of the owner. But do know that we do that.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
And it sits with us. I think people think that you walk out that consult room or out of that experience or what a procedure for you in the field, and it's over and done with. But these sort of things, we're human, and you think about it long after the event. Could I have done it differently?
You wake up at night thinking like, shit, I should have done this, or what about this? Or you open up your laptop late at night to look for that paper that might give you another answer. That thought lives in your head free. It's there and it's real.
So true.
We try to deal with it as much as we can.
Yeah. So you are very active on social media. You give a little bit of an insight into the kind of work you're doing. So people want to take a look. Where do they find you?
Yeah, it's at VetBart. So VETBART. And I try to upload every now and then. I'm not super active, but if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them there. And I'm happy to help where needed. Or give guidance or mentoring. I'm here to help you guys out.
But I think it's great to give, that visual explanation and experience to people who may not otherwise have the opportunity to go and see some of the work that you're doing. So well done for taking the time to do that, because I think the more that we are transparent about the work that we do and give people a sort of insight, the more that support and trust we're building with the general public and the population. So I think it's a small win every day where vets prepare to share their experience. So
Yeah.
Well done for doing
that.
that.
Exactly. And yeah, if I can say one more thing, there's a few NGOs that I mentioned that are super important for us and for our work, and they also do great stuff. I don't know if I can name them here.
Yes, please name them.
Yeah, it's Down to the Wire, African Wildlife Vets, Elephants Alive, Soldiers for Wildlife. I think that's the most important ones. Ooh, I should probably look this up. But yeah, maybe I should send you a little list if that's all right. Because it's important for people to know about these guys as well.
Absolutely. But what we can do as well is we can add it in some of our reels. We'll say, if you want to support the work that you're doing, you can, and then give me that list and I can include that, because it's nice for people to know that the funding that they're giving or the donations that they're giving are going to the right place. I think, again, there's been a lot of mistrust in
and it's
giving
right
to
but
NGOs.
These guys, like I said, directly support us and the animals in these areas. So
that's wonderful.
At least I can say with certainty that your money will end up in the right place.
That's great. Thank you for your time this afternoon, particularly on a day off. I really appreciate you informing me, as well as my listeners, a little bit about the work that you're doing. And I mean, I would chat for hours because it's fascinating, and it's so different to what I do that I could burden you with lots of questions, but at least we've given a little bit of a taste of the work that you're doing and some of the experiences and challenges that you face as a vet. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for taking the time to bring this message out to the people. I think that's also very important. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode on the Paws Effect Podcast. If you found the discussion helpful, please like, share, and follow our podcast. Don't forget to leave us a comment or review. We love hearing from our listeners. Remember, you can listen to us on your preferred podcast platform. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Cara.
Hi, Doc. It's Jackson the Jack Rossi here, and boy, am I itchy.
Are you on a hypoallergenic diet?
Hyper what now?
Changing to a special diet will really help. And Just for Pets have a massive range. And flea and tick medication, special shampoo.
Ooh, how quick can you get some?
Order today and we'll deliver pronto.
I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Get it all to your door.